Now, when we talked about contracting systems, I said that in the United States, we use 3 different contracting systems. And so in this lecture, we'll talk about those sources of contract law, those contracting systems, and what they are. Now, the first, and arguably the most important, is the common law. The primary source of contract law in the United States is common law, case law. And again, if you'll remember from your introduction to business law, you'll remember that the common law is the law that's produced by appellate courts when they issue an opinion on an appeal. Now, when that opinion is issued by the appellate court, that becomes the law. That's case law, that's common law. But common law is just as much the law as if the Oklahoma legislature met, discussed an issue, passed a bill, and had it signed by the governor. That's a statute. But a common law is just as much the law as a statute. And once an appellate court decides an issue, then that becomes the law. And the common law governs the majority of contracts that we deal with in our everyday life. For instance, it governs contracts that deal with services, things like accounting services, or legal services, or plumbing services, or hairstyling services. All of those contracts that you enter into on a daily basis maybe are governed by the common law. Real estate is another issue that is subject to the common law. The sale of land as well as the rental of land. Those are anything having to do with real estate is based on the common law. Employment, contracts for employment, again, primarily governed by the common law. So your employment agreement is going to be subject to the common law contracting system, meaning the common law is going to provide the elements of a valid contract for employment. It's going to provide for rules regarding performance of the contract for employment, and it's going to provide rules for remedies arising out of the violation of the agreement. And finally, insurance. Insurance is another area. Insurance is essentially a service, so it too is governed by case law, the common law. On your exam, by the way, we're not going to ask questions about what the common law says or what the UCC says, but I do expect you to know which contracting system applies to which transaction. And I'll prepare a separate lecture in which we go over some examples, and you'll have the opportunity to see how this works and what I expect you to know for the test. Now, in the United States, for domestic sales of goods, we use what's called Article 2 of the Uniform Commercial Code. And we abbreviate this by saying the UCC. And we'll talk a lot more about the UCC in a bit. But essentially what the UCC does is it governs contracts for the sale of goods between entities in different states. Now, when I'm using the word good, a good is a tangible, movable item. It's something that I can point at and say, this is a good. This computer mouse is a good. When I sell this good, that sales transaction is going to be subject to the UCC. If I agreed to go mow someone's yard, that transaction is not a good. That's a service. And therefore, that's going to be governed by the common law. And finally, the CISG, the Convention on Contracts for the International Sale of Goods, governs sales transactions between parties of different nations. And again, those transactions involve the sale of goods, so the international sale of goods, just like the name implies.